Hello boys and girls, how are we doing? Joe here from Snake Draft FPL. We are live on YouTube. If you can see me and hear me clearly, then please do let me know in the chat before I go ranting and raving with no one listening. I think it all should be working. I'm getting the green light from YouTube, which is always a good sign. How are we all doing this evening? I'm excited to talk a bit of draft. I'm excited. I love these live streams. Just nice and relaxed. No dramas. I'm going to get through some questions. And yeah, just chill out really. I'm kind of tired, so it's going to be low energy vibes. But that's good. People finding the chat. That's what I like to see. So I'm going to go through some questions from the Discord. Most of them we've got some generic questions, a couple of team-based ones. So go for all of those. I've got a few questions from the Patreon as well. So I'll go through those and then we'll just take it from chat. I might have a look at my teams, see if there's anything I urgently need to do. But yeah, that's what we're going to do. So let's get into the Discord to start with. I will. The Discord is for Patreon members. That's how you can get your questions submitted for these live streams. So let's move over. Let me do this. Okay, pre-game week 8 live stream questions. First one, a generic question. I love these kind of things. Most frustrating draft asset you've ever had. Talking about someone you cannot drop but massively underperforms on what you've expected. Son last season, for example. This is quite a hard one because I think this is my 9th season of draft. So it's quite a long time. So off the top of my head, I mean, the most recent ones kind of stick in the memory a lot more. Sterling last year was the first person I thought of. I literally owned him until game week 34 or something last year, and it was an absolute disaster. I picked him first, something like pick number 6. I really fancied him at Chelsea. I thought he was going to do a good job, and yeah, just absolute disaster. Also, another one that kind of jumps out to me is Brian Mbeumo from Brentford's first season in the Premier League, because I only picked him up in like the 9th or 10th round or something, but it was very depressing because he hit the woodwork something like 8 times in the first season, and I had him all year, and his data was so good. I was so confident he was going to come good, and it just became a bit of a running joke in our league. So that was a bad one. Aubameyang a few years ago I avoided. I didn't touch him that year, which is, definitely a bonus because that would have been a bad one. There was also I'm trying to think. There were a couple of bad ones. I know that Sadio Mane a few years ago, even though he actually did quite well, was very frustrating to own. But yeah, off the top of my head, I can't think of any better ones than that. Oh, I took Mesut Ozil in the second round about 2 years after he was really good, and that was a disaster as well. And I still love him though, There we are. Yeah, so that's quite a good question, but I can't think of any more off the top of my head. I'm sure some will pop up to me. More relevant to this season, Morgan Gibbs-White, what do we do? Now here's a question. Morgan Gibbs-White and Gakpo as well, in kind of a similar boat. So let's start with Morgan Gibbs-White. Let me get the data up, because I don't think you can talk about him until we look at the data, because that's just who I am. Where is he? Gibbs-White. There he is. Right, let me get... So we've got Fantasy Football Hub up here as always. If you are interested in signing up, use my code. A link is in the description. It's not a code, actually. You just click the link and it works from there. Morgan Gibbs-White. So, per 90 stats, Heat map, as expected, lots of touches on the edge of the box, not as much in the box as I would like, which is, something that I think is kind of epitomised this season so far. He's been good on the ball, but not quite enough in those like cut-in moments where you really need him. He's been like the pass before the assist quite a lot, stuff like that. So when we look at like the expected data, XG per game or per start, which is, I guess, not including the Brentford game because he didn't start that game, but 0.15, that's not good enough. That's not enough. 0.15, that's poor. Big chances, 0. 1 shot in the box per game. 2 shots total per game. Only 3.5 touches in the box. It's not looking good. 0.17 expected assists even. So his chance creation's down massively as well. And like, you could say, is it because of the fixtures they've had? They've had tough fixtures. Who have they had? Do I have a Forest player in here? Yeah. So they've had Arsenal away, Sheffield United at home, United away, Chelsea away. So, I mean, the away games, City away, Chelsea away, United away, Arsenal away, that's tough, right? And they've done kind of okay in most of those. But the home games, Brentford at home, Burnley at home, Sheffield United at home, 3 big home games that they should be performing in. And even despite that, his stats just aren't really good enough, are they? Like, if we compare him to someone similar... let me have a think. Let's go for Eze, because they have both been frustrating, but I think in a very different way. But you can see just from the radar that Eze is absolutely swamping him. So let's have a look at the expected data. So expected assists 0.26 compared to 0.17, 0.33 expected goals to 0.15. Even just like shots in the box, double. Shots on target, 4 times as much. 2.5 times as many shots. 18 chances created compared to 11. Like that kind of tells you all you need to know, really, doesn't it? The question you have to ask is he a drop? Because okay, he's not performing well. But do you drop him? When you look at the fixtures, the thing I'm struggling with, because I own him in the... What league is this? This is the Content Creators League. So I own him in this, and I've got some issues. I mean, these are my points for last week. Let me get my actual team up. I hate this. The zoom on the FPL site is so annoying. So yeah, I've got issues, but I'm going to keep him. Mainly because... Palace away this week, not ideal, and I would consider benching him for this. But Luton at home in game week 9, that for me is like the litmus test. If he comes through Palace away, Luton at home with 2 blanks, or even if he gets a return, but the performance is poor and the data's poor, then I might drop. Because then they go into Liverpool away, Villa at home, West Ham away. Those 3, from an attacking point of view, are not great. So it's these 2 game weeks for me. I own him in the Snake Draft League as well. I'm just going to hold him, I think, for these 2. And if it doesn't improve, I may drop. It all depends as well what pickup you have, to go... who you're going to trade him for, right? If you're trading him for a really good pickup, I can understand it. But if you're taking him out to take a punt on someone, then I don't really like it, to be honest. Because I think these 2 fixtures are good enough that he could turn it around. Right, next question in the Discord. Let me get this back up. Gakpo. Okay, yeah, straight on to the other tough topic. Gakpo. Right. Let's get him up. Let's look at the data. Because the thing is, we all know. I think the eye test for a lot of these players is pretty unanimous. We all watching the same games, right? So, I mean, occasionally you get differences of opinion on players' performances and that, but generally it's kind of it's there to see. Now, these are per start. I don't want that really. Per 90 minutes? No. Per appearance. That's probably more realistic. Because it doesn't... We want per 90 minutes is a good metric if you're going to get 90 minutes. But we're not going to get anywhere near average of 90 minutes out of Gakpo, I don't think. So, total XA for the season, 0.2. That is atrocious. Total XG for the season, 2. That's not bad. That's 0.28 per appearance. It's not great. Like it's by no means great, but it's not horrendous. It's not like absolutely horrendous. Now the details of his injury came out a little bit more today. So if we go on the Premier injuries, has this been updated? Yeah. So what we got today, Cody, there is a good chance after the break. He's already out of the brace and walks normally. So from all the very, very bad possibilities injury-wise, I think we nearly got the best. So from this, good chance after the break. Generally, I think that probably means give it one more week. So game week 10 return. So if you can bench him for 2 game weeks, I still think he's a hold. I know that he's been so frustrating, but the question you have to ask yourself is if he was free on if he was free on the waivers, would you pick him up? Because I would, I think. In this scenario where I own him, if I had someone like an Adebayo or someone like that as this third forward instead of Gakpo, someone else dropped Gakpo, I would pick him up. So why would I drop him in that scenario, right? That's kind of the key question. So yeah, I don't think he's a drop. And I know it's easy to say to every hard decision, no, hold. But I think most of the time, unless it's a really good option, it is the answer. Obviously, you can't keep lingering on the same problems all season long. But discussions on Eze. Now, Eze, the data was better than Gibbs-White, but he's out for a little bit longer. So I think Eze might be a drop. Especially if there are midfield options, and especially if you've got multiple injuries. I think of the 3, Eze is probably most likely to be the drop. He's had a scan, and obviously we'll wait on a second scan, but it's a serious injury. I'm optimistic, but the severity of the injury might suggest it's as long as 5 to 6 weeks. So if we look at Palace's fixtures, 5 to 6 weeks, we're looking at maybe get around game week 13. So the fixtures he's going to miss: Forest at home, Newcastle away, Spurs at home. Okay, that's pretty rough. Burnley away, Everton at home, potentially Luton away. If he misses those 3, Burnley away, Everton at home, Luton away, that's such a shame for people that have held him all season. But I think I would drop him. I don't think this is Eze, not Anderson. I don't think, especially if you've got other issues. If he's your only red flag, maybe I'd hold. If I've got a good squad, good depth, I'm not concerned about many other players, then I'd probably hold. But I think that if you're coming in with Eze and you've got other fires to put out, or you've got if you've got Gakpo as well, I'd rather drop Eze than Gakpo. Mainly because the thing with Gakpo as well is it's hard to come by good forwards, And how would you feel if you drop Gakpo? He misses this game week. He comes back after the international break, starts, plays well, keeps his place, his first choice all season, and gets 170 points. Like, that is very realistic. He was Liverpool's probably, other than Salah, he was their best attacker last year. So it's not out of the question that he could do that again. It actually would be a surprise if he doesn't get close to that, I think. So the upside of Gakpo is massive compared to someone like Eze, who is a talented player, but he doesn't play for a team that's going to score that many goals. So his upside is kind of capped, whereas Gakpo isn't. And like, it's kind of a similar... Oh, just killed a fly. It's kind of a similar situation with Morgan Gibbs-White. They don't score that many goals. So if he's not performing, it's very difficult. When Ramsey is fit, Ramsey or Morgan Gibbs-White, probably Ramsey, but when is Ramsey fit, right? Like, metatarsal injuries are very, very dodgy. It is really difficult for the bone to heal correctly, and that seems to be what's happened. You know, there's been loads of players over the years that have broken metatarsals, and it's happened like again and again. Like Wayne Rooney, happened to him like 3 times, didn't it? So yeah, that's kind of my opinion on those 3. Let's get this back. Any suggestions on when to pick up drops some top-ranked injured players? Is there a strategy on how to prepare your team like KDB and Kunku Tony? So my general rule is I'll hold them. So if we're talking first 2 rounds, that kind of pick, my general strategy is I always try and hold them. If they're going to be back like within this season, obviously. If they're out for the season, then drop straight away. If I can hold them without compromising my starting 11, I'll hold them. If it's going to be an issue that they're out for a long period and I need to drop them in order to get my starting 11 in shape, then I'll do it. And it is kind of a grey area on how long the injury is. So like KDB and Nkunku, I would have dropped both of them. I didn't actually own either of them, luckily, but I would have dropped both. I think when you're looking at beyond 10 game weeks, when you kind of math it out a little bit, it's quite hard, unless your squad is unbelievable, it's quite hard to justify keeping them, I think. Especially midfielders, because there's so many midfield options that every week on the waivers I look and think, oh, I'd like him. Yep, I'd like him, I'd like him, I'd like him. So there are so many options in the midfield area that I think it's quite difficult to justify holding a long-term injury, especially 15 game weeks plus. Really hard to justify. But longer than 20 game weeks, and I'm pretty much always going to drop. Forwards is a little bit trickier because there aren't always as good options available, so the stash makes more sense. Defenders I'll almost always drop if it's longer than 6 game weeks, I'd say, unless it's Trent or Trippier. Everyone else I'd drop, because there's even more options in defence, right? The more options there are on the waivers, the more likely I am to chop. So that's kind of how I think about it. And getting them back in is kind of the reverse. So the forwards I'll stash earlier, especially if I don't have 3 good forwards. Like, there are some leagues where I've got 3 quite good forwards. Like, I think I've got one with Solanke, I can't remember, Jackson, Morris, maybe. I don't like, in that kind of situation, I wouldn't really be interested in the stash until like maybe 3 game weeks away. But the longer I am away from it, the more likely I am. The worse my picks are, the earlier I'd try and stash. Okay, next question. If you could have your pick of fantasy players, who would be in your starting 11? Any players? Just an 11. So basically, if it was like season long with no transfers, I'd probably say I've had Tony stashed since the draft. Sorry, I've just seen that in the chat. I get it. I personally don't do it. Very, very rarely, because I just think that there's always options I want, and I hate having that red flag clogging up the bench, because it only takes a couple of injuries and all of a sudden your first 11 is absolute trash. But if your squad's good, and especially if a lot of people in your league aren't as active on the waivers, you can normally get away with it. Luis Diaz, Bowen and Trent for Haaland, Mount and Van der Ven. Yeah, I like that. I like that trade for Haaland, personally. I mean, Luis Diaz, Trent and Bowen is a strong trio. It's a strong trio. Van der Ven's not terrible. It is a decent pick. Mount has some upside, but Haaland probably swings it. Although, do we think he's going to do as well as last year? I do, actually. Ignore that. I do think he's going to do as well as last year. So, yeah, I think that's a good trade. My 11 would probably be Alisson, Trippier, Trent, Saliba. If we're stashing all season, actually, Ruben Diaz. Trippier, Trent, Ruben Diaz. Then the midfield would be Saka, Salah, Bruno Fernandes, Odegaard, Son, Haaland, Watkins. I think. I probably missed out someone obvious, but that's it off the top of my head. Should I sell Julian Alvarez? What about Mbeumo? I mean, there is a good time to trade these two out if you can get good picks back. That's what I'd say on that. If you're getting, like, I was negotiating a trade with someone, and this was pre-Son's hat-trick, but I'm sure he said that he'd rather trade away Son than Mbeumo. I bet he wouldn't say that now, but they definitely said that at the time. But if you can get a good pick for Mbeumo, the problem is you're probably just a few weeks too late on Mbeumo to get his peak value, which never feels good. Because I think a few weeks ago you could have got some serious trade value out of Mbeumo, and I did kind of preach that to a few people. Like, now's probably the time to get rid. He scored a few pens and a few tap-ins. It looks like a world beater. Now's probably the time they've had great fixtures. Now's the time to trade in. And it's really hard to trade someone when they're in great form. But that is almost always the absolute best time to do it. Like, coming to the end of a good run of fixtures where the form looks really good, they've scored a couple of pens, and they've got a couple of like jammy goals, there's no better time to trade someone. I traded Mbeumo, Chilwell and Stones for Ferguson and Cash a couple of weeks ago. Wow. I'm quite interested by that. Because I think I don't know what side I prefer, really. But, I mean, if Ferguson played every minute, or even 70 minutes on average, then that's a great deal for you. The problem is how much is he going to play? I mean, I assume he plays at the weekend, Ferguson. What was the he played? How much did he play on Thursday? He definitely got on, didn't he? So Welbeck started. Fatty started at the 10. João Pedro come on in the 67th minute. Ferguson came in the 77th minute. It was right after Ferguson's hat-trick. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, 15 minutes. I think Ferguson and João Pedro start at the weekend, by the way. If any of you are owners, which I'm sure many people are, I think if I had to guess the Brighton lineup, I'm going completely off topic here, but I'm just absolutely freeballing it. If I had to guess the Brighton lineup at the weekend, I think it will be Ferguson, João Pedro, Adingra, Matoma, Gross, Gilmore, Lamptey, Dunk, Van Heck, Veltman. Oh no, not Lamptey. He said Lamptey won't start. Igor, maybe? And Verbruggen. I'll probably get not all of those right. Knowing De Zerbi, I doubt many of those are going to be right, but that's my guess. That is my guess. 55 views in the chat, 14 likes. Get the likes flowing, boys and girls. Get the likes flowing. What do you think of Doku and Gvardiol? Doku and Gvardiol. I think Doku is an interesting option. We haven't really seen how much he's going to play with Grealish fit, and I'm quite comfortable predicting City lineups like short term, but it's very, very difficult to project like season long minutes of City, especially the midfielders, I find, because Pep just gets these weird vibes and all of a sudden like a certain player's just out, like Foden or Mahrez or whoever. All of a sudden they're just like not in his plans anymore, and it's almost impossible to predict, it seems. So yeah, I don't know how the Doku, Grealish, Bernardo Silva, Foden situation's going to unravel, really. And if I owning Doku now, I think is a good time to trade him, to be honest. Gvardiol, on the other hand, I think is first choice, but his problem is Ake, who is a very good player in his own right. Doku a much better player than Grealish. Do you think that? I don't think that. I disagree. I think Grealish is considerably better. Doku's exciting, very exciting, but I think Grealish does a job in a City team that Doku can't do, where Grealish maintains pressure much better, because that's what Pep likes. He likes to have that constant pressure, and Doku is more direct, but I don't think he's better, personally. Anyway, next question. Rashford, what do we do? Good question. Rashford, I think Rashford is a sell, if you can. Where's the... I'm going lower and lower when I swap these windows over. Let's get Rashford up. So the big question pre-season was, you got pick number 3, Haaland and Salah have gone. Do you go Rashford, Saka, or Bruno Fernandes? Now, I said Bruno Fernandes was my third pick. Then Rashford, then Saka. If you ask me now, it would be Saka, Bruno, and Rashford probably wouldn't even be then. So, the data is not that bad, mainly because I think Rashford's had the most shots in the league, or it's very close to it. 28 total shots to Saka's 18, for instance. Saka's expected assists are about double. The XG for Saka is close to double. The problem that Rashford has... The thing with Rashford, right? If we ignore his period from January to April, March, April, right? Outside of that period where he was constantly scoring, like week in, week out. Aside from that period, he has been poor for about 3 seasons. And that's not even an exaggeration. I think he's now got, I'm sure it's 4 goals in his last 28 games. I'm sure it's that. It's. I mean, I have him in this league as well, but let's get him up. I mean, 1 goal, 2 assists so far this season. And you can't see previous history on this. I'm sure it's 4 goals in 28 games. I think if you can get Saka, Bruno Fernandes, or Son for Rashford, I'd do it. In a heartbeat. Even maybe Maddison as well. Maybe Odegaard as well. Potentially. I know that United probably will turn it around. Probably. They might not, right? But they probably will. I just think I don't think he's a good pick at the moment. And I will, like, I would be trying to trade him. You know, I mean, it's these next 2 fixtures, Brentford at home, Sheffield United away. These 2 are massive because if he blanks in these 2, then it's 1 goal from 9 with some fantastic fixtures in there. Then it's City after that. And then, you know, the next 3, Fulham away, Luton at home, Everton away, are good. But I think if you can get a top pick for him, I'd do it. I'd definitely do it. If you can combine, even if you could combine, say like in this team, if I could do something like Rashford and Luis Diaz for Salah, I'd do that. Whoever's got Salah in the Content Creators League, Rashford and Luis Diaz could be yours. Anyway, what was I doing? Next question. If you gave us tips on who'd pick on waivers that are slightly more commonly owned, like 10 to 30% available waivers. Yeah, so I've done this a bit before in the past. I think if there is a really obvious waiver pick that's only got like 10 to 30% availability, I'll do it. But the videos, I don't like doing too many of those kind of ownership players just because if a player is only 10% owned and he's available in your league, if a player is 90% owned across the leagues, but he's available in your league, he's probably a good pick, like a very good pick if he's 90% owned. So when you make your waivers, you're probably going to see him right at the top and go for him anyway. So it's very rare there's a 90% owned player that is a good pick for that week, because I wouldn't be putting them on the waiver video if I didn't think they're a good pick. And it's like interesting to people because it's not obvious. Like normally, if they're 90% owned and they're a good pick that week, they've got a good fixture, it's probably obvious. Do you see what I mean? So I feel like it's a waste of a slot in the video. Might be wrong, but it's very rare I see a pick. And if there is one, I'll shout it out. Like Neto, a couple of game weeks ago, I think had 35% ownership. I think that's 35% availability. I think that's the least available player I've featured on the waiver picks so far. And I think he fell in the category of quite highly owned, but a really good pick that week, and someone that people might not have gone for anyway. But the majority of people that are, only available in 10% of leagues, you're going to go for whether I pick them or not. So that's kind of my feeling on it. Okay, how are we setting the lineup? Leno is the obvious pick this week. Cash, Diop, Udogie, no-brainers. Bruno Fernandes, Diaz, obviously. Gibbs-White, Palmer, Brozier, João Pedro, Haaland. So, I think the only changes I would make is if in the morning we get any kind of news. I know, Kyle, that you are, I think, American, East Coast, I think. So you have to get up at the crack of dawn to get any news, like 5 a.m. But if we get news that Brozier or Palmer aren't starting, I'd start Doku instead. Because Pochettino said, and I found this really interesting. Pochettino said, I know who's starting, and I've told them who's starting, Brozier or Jackson, and they'll just have to deal with it. Well, if the players know, the leakers will find out. People will find out. So I think before I'll be up taking pain meds, so I'll check. Good. That's what I like to hear. I think you'll know. I think we'll know. I think we'll know Brozier, whether he starts or not. We'll see. Lineup check. Let's have a look. Keepers. Oh, I'm tempted to start Pickford, you know. I think you have to start Onana, right? But I'd be seriously tempted to go for Pickford. Seriously tempted. Trippier, Ward, Diop. Yeah, solid. Bruno Fernandes, Maddison, Ward-Prowse, Neto, Gibbs-White, Foster, Darwin. Yeah, I think this is the one. I mean, I'd consider Brozier, but I'm not sure who for. I guess Foster's the obvious one, but I actually quite like Foster at home to Chelsea. So if Brozier's guaranteed to start, I think you kind of have to play him. But who would you bench? Maybe Gibbs-White. Brozier for Gibbs-White. If he's guaranteed to play, maybe. Picked up Stones and James this week. Yeah, I think that's smart. They both could be back. Brozier or Foster, yeah, that's the key question. Looking at Gross or Decore for Morgan Gibbs-White. I personally don't think I would drop Gibbs-White yet. I kind of spoke about it earlier, but potentially you could. What do you think of Stones long term? He was the best City defender last season, right? So you know, you can't really argue with that. When he's fit, I think he's a great pick. Really good pick. I mean, it kind of helps that he's not. We're not sure if he's available yet. Well, I don't think he is going to be available yet. But the fixtures are quite bad anyway. So hopefully, by the time the fixtures get good again, I think around game week 11, he'll then be fit and in the team. So yeah, Fatty or Sinistera? Well, good question. I think long-term Fatty. This week, probably Sinistera. Although there was a bit of a weird update about Sinistera. A very weird update. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Because I couldn't really. I need to read it a couple more times to get my head around it. Right. So this is what Iraola said about him. So, when you change clubs, probably training is different. The style is a bit different. So, he needs to start winning his physical strength because we know that his quality is there. He is very good, especially offensively. He is a difference maker. We need him. He has the speed also to attack the depth. So, I think mostly we will start at least thinking he can play on the left. So, up until that final sentence, I'm like, he is going to start this weekend. And then he says, so I think mostly we will start at least thinking that he can play on the left. What the hell does that mean? What a frustration. I'd rather he'd not mention Sinistera at all than say that. Did I answer the Patreon questions? The ones from Discord, yes. The one from the website, no. I'll get onto them. Yeah, so what the hell does that mean? I mean, I might just start him. I might pick him up and start him. Just see what happens. Any suggestions? Let's have a look. Areola over Steele, yeah. Thiago Silva, Cash, Diop, Burmo, Willian, Bruno Fernandes, Maddison, Alvarez, Jesus, Solanke. Nah, that's it. That's the one. I'd like to start Hwang if I had him, but who are you going to bench? Willian? That's your choice, I think. Willian versus Hwang. I think that's the choice. I think I'd probably go for Willian, like you have. Oh, you just dropped Eze for Hwang. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that's the decision you got to make. I think I'd probably leave it as is. I think. Lineup check. Currently last and had a horrific start. KDB, Mount, Shaw, Mitrovic. Yeah, that is tough. That is very tough. I've been week by week, revived my team, managed to get Grealish or someone long season, but Finian. Okay, let's have a look. Pickford, yeah. Tarkowski, Lindelof, Ward, Gued, Burn, Gibbs-White, Kudus, Grealish, Havertz, Doucouré. Wow. This is the kind of... Just quickly. I love this team. I absolutely love this team. Right? Do you know why? You can tell instantly that this man or girl has been working the waivers. I love this team. This kind of looks like my pyramid team because he's had some bad luck. KDB, Mount, Shaw, Mitrovic. Kudus has obviously come in off the waivers. Lindelof, Ward, Aguerd. These are waiver. Tarkowski. These are all grinding the waivers. And I think this team looks pretty good. The forwards, I would start Solanke over Raul Jimenez, I think. I think I'd start Solanke over Raul. I think Solanke's a fantastic pick, by the way. Like, absolutely, probably top 5 forward in the game. That might be too much. Haaland, Alvarez, Jesus, Watkins, Isaac. Top 6 forward in the league, I'd say. I like this team. But yeah, I'd probably be starting Solanke over Jimenez, I think. Or maybe over Grealish, actually. Maybe over Grealish, because we don't really know if he's going to play. Arsenal away is probably the worst fixture in the league for City. So yeah, but other than that, I like it. Who, in your opinion, if Saka is injured, should I put Kulu or Tarkowski? Kulu. Can you compare Darwin and Isak? You are underrating him, I think. Okay, I will compare them, absolutely. But which one do you think I'm underrating? Because I'm not convinced I'm underrating either of them. Because I rate both of them. So maybe I am underrating one of them. Darwin probably actually should have been in that list of strikers I just reeled off. I didn't think of him, to be fair. Oh, not Solanke. What am I doing? Although, just peep this data from Solanke quick while it's on the screen. You rated Solanke high. Yeah, that was a mistake. I should have put Darwin in there. I absolutely should have put Darwin in there. I completely forgot about him. Although, peep this. Per appearance, yeah, that's what we want to see. XG, Isaac's got him beat by about a goal. XA, not really important. I don't think either of them are going to be getting many assists. I know Darwin's had a couple, but they weren't really assists, were they? They were like scrambles and stuff. Touches in the box. It's an important stat, I think, for forwards. Isaac's got him beat. Double the shots on target. Is this right? Darwin's only had 5 shots on target. Oh my lord. This website is Fantasy Football Hub. Link in the description if you're interested. Use my code to sign up. It's not a code, actually. It's just a link. I always say that. Darwin's had 5 shots on target from 14 shots. Come on, man. I know he's hit the woodwork like 7 times, but that is not great. 3 goals, 2 assists. I'd still rate Isaac higher than... I would rate Isaac higher than Darwin at the moment. I think the minutes projection is probably kind of similar for both of them. I think Isaac's really good. Really good. But yeah, Darwin's a great pick. Darwin's absolutely a great pick. Great pick. Let me have a look at Solanke versus Darwin. It's piqued my interest now. How's Dom stack up? Similar. Darwin Núñez has had 8 big chances. My God, this man is an absolute fantasy points dodger. Good Lord. 8 big chances and 3 goals. He is annoying. He is so annoying. Yeah. I'm surprised that his... Oh, he has created 8 chances. I thought it'd be more than that. Yeah, pretty close actually. I'd say pretty close. And the good thing about Solanke is he's absolute talisman 90 minutes every week. Every week, you know he starts, which is always a big bonus. Do I think Edouard will start this weekend? I actually think there's a decent chance he does start. Yeah, I think there's a good chance. That quote is not from today. Let me find the quote from today. 1 second. There was information on Edouard. Here it is. Odsonne Edouard missed out last weekend as a precaution. That's good news. And while there was no mention of the striker from Roy Hodgson during the open section, he is expected to return. The Eagles boss admits Eze could be sidelined for up to 6 weeks. The club waiting for a second scan. So Edouard's fit as far as we know. There was no mention of him when Hodgson ran through all his injuries. So, and he's been in training all week. So I don't see why Edouard doesn't start, which is great news because I've got him in 4 out of 6 leagues. Ramsey or Sarr? Ramsey or Sarr? Sarr, because Ramsey is injured. Considerably injured, I think. I suspect Ramsey will be out for a while. What website is that for injuries? This is premierinjuries.com. I think. Yeah, premierinjuries.com. And it is fantastic. It is ran by a bit of a legend called Ben Dinnery, who tracks all the press conferences. He's a great follow on Twitter if you are a Twitter user. Because he tweets every injury. He knows all the return to plays, everything. He's fantastic. And this is his website. This injury table is like, I think it might be my homepage. It is very handy. I mean, you can literally just any club ruled out when they're back. This is like the latest quote. Yeah, it's just very, very useful. Would I start Morgan Gibbs-White or Rashford? I'd definitely start Rashford. You have to start him. I know I said I'd sell him if I could, but I think you have to start him. I think you have to start him. Like, if you're not starting him at Brentford at home, then what are you doing? Like, why do you own him? Do you know what I mean? Right, let me get up the last... There's a couple of questions from the actual Patreon thingamajig. So let me get these up. Gibbs. Let's have a look. Do you think it's worth starting Harrison? Do you think Harrison starts? I'm not sure. I think it's going to be. No, I don't think he's going to start. Let me think. I think it's going to be McNeil, Onana, Doucouré. O'Neill. No, O'Neill. Who am I talking about? O'Neill. Doucouré, McNeil, Onana, Gay, and maybe Harrison starts on the right. Actually, if he starts, then he's a good pick, right? I mean, Bournemouth at home. It depends who you're benching for him. It all depends on who you're benching for him. I don't think he's a bad pick this week. Will Szoboszlai start getting in on the goals and assists? I would have thought so. I think he's an absolutely brilliant player, like absolute fantastic player. And Szoboszlai, I think is a top pick because he's gonna pick up his returns just through how many goals the team score, and their fixtures are really good coming up. How long would you hold Cucurella? Probably not that long because I've got a suspicion that as soon as Gusto's back, we'll see Colwill left back, Thiago Silva, Disasi, Gusto. So I don't like the Cucurella pick. It's why I didn't pick him this week in the waiver video, because I just have a feeling that he might not start for very long. Which one would you have in your team most and which one least for this game week? Morgan, Gibbs-White, Zaniolo, Bailey, Willian or Gross? I still think Morgan Gibbs-White is the best pick out of the bunch. I also really like Pascal Gross, although the fixture's not great this week. Then Willian, I think, has the great fixture this week, but long-term not as good. Zaniolo and Bailey, I just can't quite get my head around what's going on there, to be honest. Like, I can't really figure out if they're good picks or not, which is obviously not really, the answer you want. But I just can't get a feel for them at the moment. Bailey, I don't think is one I'd go for. He's probably least. I've got quite a strong defence with Gvardiol, Cher, Van de Ven, Cash, Zinchenko. Should I keep all of them now or change someone to get room for weekly changes at defence? If you can trade one or two, like if you could trade, say, Gvardiol for an upgrade in midfield, I would do it. So then you have that streaming spot, because I feel like there's not that much benefit to having 5 really good defenders. I'd much rather get an upgrade in midfield and then just stream the final spot, or even 2 spots. Even something like Gvardiol and Van de Ven and a midfielder for a midfield upgrade could be a great trade for you. Okay, I believe that is all the questions. So let's just go into chat mode. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Lineup dilemmas, macro questions, anything you fancy, stick them in the chat. Remember to like the stream while you're here. But yeah, let's just go for it. Anything you fancy. Dean versus Colwell for this week. Probably Dean, I think. Probably Dean, I think. One thing I am going to do actually while we are here is I'm going to get up my... Oh dear, that's not in the right place. I'm going to get up the game week cheat sheet for this week. So let's go on to this. So for Patreon members, will know that every single week I create this game week cheat sheet with all kinds of data, fixtures, game week odds, everything you could want for draft FPL. I personally, I don't, I create it, so I obviously think it's good. But this is probably the thing I think that is the most valuable. This and the Discord is the thing that's most valuable about the Patreon. Definitely. So, when you say Dean or Colwill, in terms of clean sheet percentage, Chelsea are at 33%, according to the bookies. Villa at 25%. Dean obviously has a decent amount more attacking threat than Colwill. So it all comes down to whether you want to punt on the attacking threat of Dean or just try and rely on the clean sheet. I will say that a 1 in 3 chance compared to a 1 in 4 chance isn't that different. So you might be better off just taking the punt on Dean. That would be my... Who to bench, Jensen, Mount or Sarr? I think I would bench Jensen, personally. I have Morgan, Gibbs-White and Jota, but Ramsey and Mudryk free agents. Should I swap any? Also have Martinelli, surely bench with Stones, probably bench as well. So Jota is tough for me. I wouldn't drop Jota. I know I've seen a lot of people talk about him to drop. But for me, if Jota was free in any of my leagues, I would absolutely snap him up. I'd be picking him up in an instant because his return per minute is unbelievable over his career. So yeah, I wouldn't drop Jota personally. I don't know if I think there's a decent chance Martinelli plays. I don't think we got an update on him today. Did we get an update on Martinelli today? Where's the... Yeah, I think Martinelli's going to play. I reckon he plays. It's a guess from me, but I think he's going to play. Would you drop Gordon for Almiron or Neto? I'd consider dropping Gordon for Neto, potentially. But I really like Gordon, and their fixtures are really good. I'd like to have both of those, if that was an option, which it wasn't. That's not an option you gave, but that would be the option I'd choose. Start Mudryk or João Pedro? I think probably João Pedro because I'm more confident that he's going to play. Did we get an update on Mudryk? I know... Oh my God, they've got so many injuries. Okay, they're both in the squad. And then we will decide if they can be available to play from the start or not. What does that mean? These managers are driving me mad this season. They're all talking in riddles. Why can't they just tell us if they're fit or not? It absolutely does my head in. Does my head in. You think Brozier starts over Jackson? Personally, I think he's going to start. But that is completely... I think we'll know before the deadline. But that is completely pulled out of my hole. But I think Brozier is going to start. Start 3 of Almiron, Douglas Luiz, João Pedro, Edouard and Dalot. Edouard, João Pedro, Almiron. Managed to pick Havertz up on waivers this week. Dropped Eze. Do you reckon he'll come good? Yeah, I do. I think he will. Yeah, I personally am holding on to Havertz. I know the goal last week was kind of a gift penalty, But that's the kind of thing that can turn a player's confidence around, right? So, yeah, I'm happy to keep him. I have Morgan Gibbs-White. Oh, yeah, I've read that one. Johnson, Udogie, Trippier, Estupinan, Son, Madders, Foden, Diaby, Haaland, Alvarez, Watkins with subs. Do I do minus? Oh, okay, regular FPL. Yeah, I think you got to take a minus. No, I'd just play Saliba, to be honest. I'd just play Saliba. If you're definitely not going to wildcard, well, if you want to hold it long term, then I'd probably take the hit. Trade Stones for an Arsenal defender. If you can, I think that's probably a good shout. If it's, if it's Gabriel, Zinchenko, Saliba, or Ben White, I think that's probably a good idea. Grealish, Eze, Morgan, Gibbs-White drops. Eze, I think, is, yeah. Should I hold Nketiah? Now that, at the moment, yes, just because of the injuries, I think he's going to get a decent amount of minutes. Long term, he might turn into a drop quite soon. Rodrigo's available in my league. Do I pick him up for my 5th spot? Gross or Sarr? No. He had a period at the start where he looked like he was playing a different role, but the numbers dropped off drastically pretty quick. Not a pick, in my opinion now. Interested about your work with this content that I appreciate so much. Do you get any money away with this? You have any personal companions? Are you planning? So I get a little bit, yeah. I make a little bit of money through the Patreon, and to be honest, the Patreon keeps the content alive because I spend a decent amount of time. I mean, it's hard because a lot of the stuff kind of research I was doing anyway before I made content just to do well in draft. So now I do it and then I make it I turn it into content. But it does take a decent amount more time than I did before. And the Patreon, I earn a little bit of money from the Patreon, a few £100, and that is enough for me to justify doing it. I get a little bit of money if you sign up to Fantasy Football Hub through my link. Other than that, that's pretty much it. And I make a few pennies from Google ad revenue, but I don't really do it for the money, but the money justify, I don't make much money from it either, but the money kind of justifies me spending the time on it. It's kind of how I'm looking at it. But we'll see. I enjoy it. That's the main reason I do it. But the money it's easier to justify when you do make a few quid from it. But honestly, to those of you that have already signed up to the Patreon, and I kind of do plug it a little bit more than I maybe should, but the Patreon and the support from that absolutely keeps the content flowing. So massive thanks. Liverpool or Newcastle defence this week. I would say, good question. Newcastle. Unless it's Trent. Then I would play Trent. Always. Havertz or Trossard? Havertz for me. I think he's going to get more minutes, which is crazy. PL should adopt injury reports like the NFL. Yes, they should. I don't know how it works. I don't know how it works in the NFL. Is it independent people that do the injury reports, or is it the club, the franchises? Because I think the managers it's kind of a tightrope. The Premier League pressurise the managers to do the media and tell them what's going on, but the managers want to withhold as much information as possible for a competitive advantage. So I think the only way we'd ever get proper injury reports is if it was an independent service that did it, like not coming from the clubs. But I don't know. I don't think they'll ever do that, unfortunately. Archer, Vinicius, or Amdouni long term? Probably. That's tough. Probably Amdouni. I'm still backing Burnley to do all right. I still think they're going to get it. I think it's going to click. I'm in a 6-man league with Haaland, Watkins, and Nketiah as forwards. Sterling and Boomer in March. Almiron, Richarlison midfield. Do you think I have points in long term? Yeah, I think that's solid long term. I mean, 6-man league. The thing is, you've got Haaland, right? So if the rest of your picks are okay, there are penalties for weaseling the reports. I like that. Now that I like. I don't think we'd ever get that in the Premier League, but I wish we would. Love your content. Just worried I'll run into some of my league members on here. That's hilarious. There have been that, it will happen. It will happen. Well, hopefully it will happen because that means there's more viewers. But there's a couple of Patreon members that arrived in the Discord and, bumped into each other, and they're from the same league. So that was great. That was brilliant. But, what can you do, eh? I'm sure it happens in proper FPL content creators when they get much bigger than I am. Trossard or Odegaard? Odegaard for sure. Douglas Luiz, Wilson, Pereira, or Hwang Hee-chan for this week. Douglas Luiz is on a crazy run of form, isn't he? I keep doing that. I'm sure he's done something mad. Let me see if I can find it. I'm sure it's something like he scored in 5 consecutive home games or something ridiculous like that. Is that right? Goal. Well, he scored in 3 consecutive home games this season, and they're away to Wolves this week. It's a good fixture. Douglas Luiz is definitely a decent pick, but I personally don't love it, which is annoying. I don't really know why. It's the reliance on set pieces and penalties and stuff that kind of makes me a little bit nervous. Wilson, Pereira. I think Pereira's the pick over Wilson at the moment, unfortunately. Or Hwang. I like Hwang in this fixture. I really do like Hwang Hee-chan in this fixture against Villa. This high line, he's rapid. I think he's a good pick this week, and I'm going to go for him. Hwang Hee-chan of the 3. I have both the Spurs fullback, Udogie, and Pedro Porro. Which is a long-term hold? I think they're both long-term holds. I think Pedro is the better pick, though. If you're only going to continue with one of them, Pedro Porro is the one I'd go for, personally. I think he's much more attacking. Udogie's good, but he comes inside a lot more, like a little bit deeper, and kind of plays that more Zinchenko role. Gabriel or VVD for this week? Gvardiol or VVD for this week? VVD for me. I have JWP too, so I'm all set pieces, yeah. Although, JWP has surprised me, and I will admit, I think I was wrong about him. Not in terms of, I've always thought he's a good player, but I think I was wrong in his role at West Ham. He's been playing way further forward than I thought he would. Like, let's get his heat map up on here. Where is he? Oh, it's a hyphen. The heat maps, like, what is this? What are these? We're not used to this. I mean, I know about all this stuff, but there's some, like, advanced positions here, which is a real surprise. 10 touches in the box. That's something new. Like, that's something we've not really seen from him before. 4 shots in the box. I think JWP is a serious pick, and not just for the set pieces. Diaby, Bruno Fernandes, Maddison, Doucouré, Neto, Højlund, Watkins, Foster. Drop 1. I think the choice is between Foster and Doucouré. I think the choice is between Foster and Doucouré. I'm not sure which one, though. Like, Foster, I think I'd bench Doucouré. I know the fixture's really good, but there's something about Lyle Foster. And nah, you have to play Doucouré. I'm changing my mind. The fixture's too good. He's been playing really advanced. Foster it's away to Chelsea, isn't it, for Burnley? Is that right? Oh, Burnley are at home. Ooh. I think that's a really tough one. If I owned Foster, which I do, I wouldn't want to bench him. I think I'd bench. But Doucouré's data has been ridiculously good. To be honest, I mean, Diaby might not be fit and you might get both of them anyway, but first on the bench, for me, Doucouré. Is Sterling a hold? He's annoying, but he's certainly a hold. Yeah, definitely a hold. Let's have a look at Sterling. How do the stats look? This is classic Raheem. Look at these touches in the box. It's like 75 touches in the box. Oh my God. That is ridiculous. 75. Like, how many Salah had? $48. Sterling's had 75 touches in the box. And he's converted those 75 touches into 12 shots. What are you doing, Raheem? Oh my Lord. That is a ridiculous amount. I mean, look at this heat. His heat map is in the box. How is he not converting all those touches into, like, goals and assists? It is beyond me. 2 goals and 1 assist from that sort of area is absurd. I can't explain to you how absurd that is. Yeah, he's definitely a hold. Man just dribbles past goal. He does. He is the number 1 fantasy points dodger. I called Darwin a fantasy points dodger earlier, but Sterling is the king of that. Even though the fixtures are rough coming up, Burnley away is pretty good this week. Brentford at home in 10 is alright. The rest are, Arsenal at home, Tottenham away, City at home, Newcastle away. They're rough, but he's still a good pick. With this kind of data, he's still a pick for sure. Almiron and Porro or Doku and Zinchenko. Almiron is someone that I don't own in any leagues. I've never even considered this season. And I don't know why, because he is just a decent pick. I think just in my head it's always eventually going to be Gordon and Harvey Barnes, but I need to get rid of that because that's not happening anytime soon. Almiron is first choice and a good player. So I think that's pretty close. The Arsenal defence is considerably better than Spurs in terms of, like, clean sheet potential. But Porro's much more attacking than Zinchenko. And I think I'd take Almiron over Doku, to be honest. So probably that side. Højlund, Wissa and Kunku. Drop one for Edouard. I'd drop Kunku for Edouard. I don't think he's back soon enough to waste a spot in your team. And I think Edouard's a really good pick. Dean, Wilson, Disassi. Which one to bench? I think I bench Callum Wilson because I don't think he's going to start because he's getting over a hamstring problem himself, I think. I think he is going to be fit, but like not. Callum, we think. Okay, that's last week. Callum, we think won't. So he was close last week, but he didn't make it. I know he's been in training this week, but I don't think he starts. I don't think they'll risk him starting, so I'll probably bench him. Share or Burn? I think I'd probably take Share. It's close though. Not much in it, but he's slightly more attacking. What the hell is going on with John Stones? I have no idea. When I drafted him, I was so excited, and then it was like the day before or the day of the deadline, he was like out. You're like, oh, okay, maybe a couple of weeks. Then it was a couple of weeks. Then it was like, oh, first international break. Then we just didn't hear anything for a month. Like, and now he's still not back. And it's classic John Stones. He gets these like muscular injuries, and then they just roll on and on and on for ages. Yeah, very, very annoying. What's the latest? What was the latest today? Oh, he's not even on here, so he must be reasonably fit. Let me search. John Stones is not ready to play, maybe for the national team, but not for us. He was in the matchday squad against Leipzig, though. Weird bloke, isn't he, Pep? Very weird bloke. What a strange thing to say. I guess he's going to be back after the international break then. That's kind of what we can gather from that, I guess. Start 2, Jensen, Sarr, Mateta. I think with the Edouard update that he looks like he's going to be fit, probably Jensen and Sarr. Start 3, Wissa, Alvarez, Awanai, Neto. Alvarez, Awanai. Oh, this is horrible. Neto, I think. The fixture's better. But that's pretty tough. That is a pretty tough one, actually. I'm going to have let's have a look at my teams. I've only got one team at the moment that I'm not happy with. And it's the team I decided to feature on the YouTube channel, which is classic Joe idiocy. Oops. Come on. What's going on here? Havertz or Doku, try I think Havertz. I think. So the pyramid team down in 7th, and the total score is not good either. I had a bit of a stinker last week. Bit of a stinker. I should never have gone for Mount. And now I have him, I don't want to drop him. But this is how we're looking. I'm praying for the Palace clean sheet. I did a trade, actually, in this team this week. Trade went through. It was Gvardiol and Cunha I received for Beto and Stones. And I'm pretty happy with that because I think Gvardiol's minutes are probably a bit better than Stones, especially short term, but probably long term as well. And Beto, I think, is not a terrible pick at the moment. But at the moment, DCL's fit, so I don't think he's Beto's first choice. And then even if DCL gets injured, their fixtures get absolutely shocking. So I know I've got the double Wolves now, which you might think is not a good idea. But the fixtures are quite nice. Villa at home, Bournemouth away, the next two is good. Then it's Newcastle at home. It's at home, it's not horrendous. Then Sheffield United away, that's not bad. Spurs at home, I think on the counter could be quite good. Fulham away, that's all right. Arsenal away in 14, and then it's another decent run. So, yeah, I'm quite happy with the. I think Cunha and Neto is quite an exciting double up, to be honest. It's the United, Bruno Fernandes and Mount. We'll see what happens this week. If Mount starts and looks okay, I might keep him, but he's definitely on the chopping block. Definitely. Hopefully Edouard starts. Which I think he actually might now after today's. Who do you like long term, Gvardiol or Akanji? I think Gvardiol just. Although Akanji, right? When you think of the City 11, he's never in it, but he just always seems to play. I own him in the Snake Draft League, and like multiple times I've looked at the spot and thought, I don't know how I feel about that. But like this season, he's missed one game, and that's because he had a concussion. He started every other game, and he just starts. Like he just starts and starts and starts. So I kind of secretly like Akanji a lot. Shaw's seen arriving at Carrington. Hopefully he's close to coming back. I don't know what the timeline is on Shaw. I think he's still a little while away, isn't he? I'm not 100% sure on that one. Terrible. Yeah, maybe a week or 2 weeks, maybe. Longer than Mason, and he's back, so hopefully not too much longer. Should I start Edouard or Zaniolo? I think you start Edouard. Edouard is still a doubt, but I think he's going to start. If he doesn't start, I don't think he's going to come off a bench, because like a hammy injury is the kind of one where you're either fit or you're not. So, yeah, this is definitely my worst team. And I think it looks all right. It's by far my worst performing so far. My best team is probably the 100 team. Why does this keep happening? This team, I think, and I'm in third, and I've lost I lost 59-53 this past game week, which is quite brutal. But this team, I think, is really good. This is probably my favourite team. Just the Odegaard, Son, Szoboszlai, Neto, Sarr. I really like the midfield. Solanke, Wissa and Morris. 3 like boring, mid-table, but just decent forwards that I can just rotate around based on the fixtures. Ruben Dias, double Palace defence. I've picked up Lindelof this week. Newcastle defender. Yeah, I think this... Oh, actually, do you know what? I've got a feeling Turner might lose his place. I wonder if there are any keepers available in this league. Who have we got? Kaminsky is literally it. So, no. I think I'll just hope. Last chance saloon for Jackson this week. Yeah, I think if Jackson doesn't start this week, he could be on the chopping block for a lot of people, which is ironic considering he was such highly rated after a couple of games this season. But that happens. Draft, we kind of had this discussion in the Discord the other day, but draft, you might not realise it, but draft is a stock market. The whole season, the value of your players is going up and down. If they play well, the value goes up. They get injured, it crashes. They lose their spot in the team, it crashes. And if you can sell your players when the value is high for players that are going up, everyone knows how the stock market works, right? That's the game. And there are lots of people out there and good draft managers that barely ever trade. There's quite a few actually that just churn the waivers. They don't trade their big players. They just hold them all season. And you can do well like that. But I think you're missing a trick if you don't try and take advantage of trading. Like, there's so many occasions where a player has a good run of fixtures they do well. They get a couple of maybe lucky returns. But when you're the owner, you have to try and decide what was luck and overperforming and what was like just good play, because there is a difference. And sometimes it's both. But when a player's overperforming, there will be people that think, oh my God, look at all these points. I need to get him in. And the hardest thing to do in draft is drop someone that's performing well. But it's often the best thing you can do. Not drop, trade. Would you trade Haaland for anything? Yeah, definitely. Salah and Saka. Not that anyone owns Salah and Saka, but there are trades I would do for Haaland. Definitely. Salah plus a top forward. I would definitely do. Definitely. The only thing that Haaland gives you that is hard to replace is he occupies that forward slot, and you don't really need to worry all year about scarcity of forwards, which is really nice. It's something that Kane did as well, and that's why I was gutted when Kane left. I mean, listen, Spurs are by far my least favourite team in the league. I'm happy that, you know, Kane left for that reason, but also for draft, I think it was a massive loss. Just limiting that forward pool more and more and more. I only have 10 starters. Oh, here we go. I love these. I only have 10 starters. Gakpo, Jota, Gordon, James on the bench. Oof. Is it worth ditching Gakpo for a Jackson DCL? See, I find it interesting that of Gakpo, Jota, Gordon and James, Gakpo is the one that you're most likely to move on. I guess he's been the most disappointing. But I think he's the one that's probably the most... Having both Gakpo and Jota is rough. This is just bad luck. I would consider rolling with 10. I would really consider... How close is... I wouldn't want to drop Gakpo or Jota, personally. I wouldn't want to drop either of those. Gordon, I don't think I'd want to drop either, which is ironic because I didn't really rate him as a pick not that long ago. But he's actually really impressed me over the last 2 weeks, aside from the annoying yellow cards. So those three I don't think I'd want to drop in a 10-man league. Did you say it's 10-man league? Oh, how many's in the league, actually? Because that will change my opinion. How many's in the league? James, on the other hand... What was it? Reece was training with the group. It's a shame that he's suspended and is banned for tomorrow. He is available, so after he'll be back. Yeah, 8-man league. I think I'd roll with it. The only thing is, Chelsea's fixtures are crap. Chelsea's fixtures are pretty bad, especially as he's suspended for this week, which is probably the best fixture. I don't even know where this suspension came from, by the way. This was not on my radar at all. I saw he was fit and was like, oh, brilliant, he's going to play this week. Suspended. I have no... I know it's something to do with a fourth official, but I also had Chilwell. Yeah, Chilwell. Oh, anyone that owns Chilwell, drop. He is an absolute drop, for sure. Burnley away. So he's going to miss Burnley away. Then it's Arsenal, Brentford, Spurs, City, Newcastle, Brighton, United. Look at this run for Chelsea. Arsenal, Brentford, Spurs, City, Newcastle, Brighton, United. That is horrendous. Thanks, Reece. Thanks for joining in. I'm not going to be streaming too much longer. I'm going to be heading off imminently anyway, so you're not going to miss much. I mean, you can't drop a fit Reece James. But the fixtures are seriously stinky. I think you've got to roll with 10. I think I'd roll with 10. Play Ferguson or Foden this week. Foden. Yeah, Foden. Right. On that note, I am going to knock it on the head there. Thank you all for joining me. I'm always a little bit nervous when I live stream that I'm just going to start the camera up, fire the stream, and there's just going to be no one there. So I'm very grateful to anyone that turns up in the live chat. Thank you all for joining me. I hope you all have a decent game week. I am going to be back next week with the waiver picks, of course. Game week cheat sheet for Patreon members. I'm also thinking of doing any of the YouTube videos I make. I'm thinking of doing them audio only as well and sticking them up for the Patreons. So any Patreons, you can look forward to that. JJ, nice to see you in the chat. Good luck for your game week as well. Hopefully I'm not playing you. Yeah, thank you for joining me. Appreciate everyone turning up. And I will see you all next time.